What you gonna do, brother, when Jeff Townsend Media runs wild on you?
Don't let mama regret. Give your love and your sweat till you shatter.
All right. This is Jeff Townsend, and joining me is Bill Legend, Bill DeMott, the Bill guy. He was late, but I gave him the pass because I was watching the ISU, Indiana State University. Unfortunately, they lost in the NIT championship game. But how you doing, Bill?
Man, your team lost, my team lost. What a day.
Yeah, I still got one team in it, though. I'm wearing the hat tonight. The Boilermakers are still in it, man.
Do, buddy. I'll tell you, I don't watch a lot of basketball until the Sweet 16 and then, the Elite 8 and then down to it. So that's when I become a college basketball fan. So I'm really not hip to it. I just enjoy the play. I just enjoy to watch them play.
Can you hear my phone going off?
No.
Going off like crazy. But no, Purdue is like, I don't know, half an hour from here. Indiana's all basketball, man. So, I mean, it's
French Lick.
It's awesome.
I want to go to French Lick, Indiana. I just want to go where Larry Bird grew up.
Yeah, that's who ISU played. That's where he went to school.
God. Oh.
So they just, they didn't make it into the tournament. They were kind of snubbed, man, but
Jeez.
It is what it is. How are things going for you this week with the foundation and everything?
Man, we are you can see the background of the mansion in the office here. I had 2 presentations today, this being Thursday. It's been a very busy week for the foundation. Prom and graduation times. Usually when people try to request us for more speaking, spoke to a couple thousand students today. Just amazing, man.
A couple thousand?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. The conversations that have come out of it and just being able to spend time with those students. But I got to be honest, it wears me out. So when I do one presentation, and it wears me out mentally and emotionally, more than physically, but doing 2 in one day like that, it's a little bit taxing. So I'm a little tired. I'm a little kind of like drained, but what an awesome day. And things just keep going in the right direction for the foundation. So as always, thank you for asking and giving me a couple minutes to just catch everybody up on what we're doing. It's a journey, man.
We appreciate everybody out there joining us live across 8 different platforms. It's awesome. The Bill DeMott Experience live.
Yeah.
We just released an episode about WrestleMania. So the live experience is about a week ahead of the release date on YouTube and then audio form. So with that being said, with WrestleMania being this weekend, we'll obviously talk about the results of that next week. But we didn't want to get into too much information this week about that because it would be post-Mania.
Right.
But there was another crazy event that happened this week, Bill. And I think this will be probably the last time we really talk about CM Punk and AEW. I don't know if you got to watch the interview that he was on this week.
I did watch it. And then I caught the... how can I say, the variations that people posted of it, because, certain people or places only post so much of it, but I got to listen to it. I got to watch it. Clearly, this is not a matter that's been swept under the rug. I mean, clearly we thought we were done with this conversation between CM Punk and AEW, but apparently it's opened some old wounds or opened the door for people to start discussing what truly happened at Wembley and afterwards and so forth. But I found it interesting. I did listen to Shivani's.
Oh, where he basically
to all of it.
Talking about it.
Yeah. And, just to hear Tony cuss a couple times, I don't give a crap about it and all these things. And a lot of people posting about, geez, can't we just get past this? So I think
this is the beginning of the end, though, of it. I really do.
The beginning of the end of the
conversation.
topic.
What was that? Yeah, I think this CM Punk AEW conversation will kind of fade off now, and I think that'll be it.
And I don't want this to sound like sarcastic, but it's about time that everybody let the sleeping dogs lie and just everybody coming together with let's just move on from this. I don't know if it was therapeutic for Punk to let it out and people to hear it, but to your point, I hope this is the end of it. Let's move on. I know a lot of people, a lot of different AEW stars had things to say about it and things like that, but let's move on. If everybody's happy, let's move on. Punk's where he wants to be and needs to be. AEW's where they want to be and need to be. And Like you said, I hope it's the beginning of the end of the conversation and it doesn't have to come up anymore.
Certainly feels like it. So what we're going to do throughout this episode, because this is obviously the overwhelming topic that the viewers/listeners of the Build 'Em On experience wanted to talk about this week, which whenever we've talked about CM Punk before, it's always been the best viewed or listened to, downloaded episode.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's that way with a lot of people's content.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
of course, I'm a big CM Punk fan, so I'm more than willing to. But let's go ahead. I have the whole interview here. We'll watch portions of it and talk through it.
Great.
Let's see here. I don't have it broke down in segments, so I'm gonna literally find it here.
Most interesting to start with is the return, if we can. So WWE is back in Chicago, Survivor Series, November 2023.
Mm-hmm.
You return. When does that ball start to roll? Because I think a lot of people are hoping, all right, you're free and clear. Could it happen? They're looking for any sign. Someone says something in commentary. Oh my God, he's foreshadowing. When does that ball actually start to roll towards the return on that Saturday night?
Slight percentages, I think, over the years start that ball rolling, but to really get in, like the action of it started the week of, I think, Thanksgiving, maybe. I'd have to look at a calendar to figure out dates exactly. I remember like times and places of where I was when I would get phone calls and such. And I had a CFFC show coming up, I think. So I got a call from Nick Khan, and he was just like, "Hey, we want to talk to you." And I was like, "Cool. On my way to the gym, and I got this coming up, CFFC. I'll be back there. Cool. You want to talk Monday? Great." So it was the week of Thanksgiving, Monday. I spoke to him.
And to be clear, for those that may not know, Survivor Series was the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving is a Thursday.
Yeah. So Monday
of that week.
before I came back.
That's 5 days away from Survivor Series.
Yeah.
You get the call.
Yeah.
What was that call like?
I think the call, I'm always so nervous about pulling the curtain back on stuff, but I think the call was more of a, "Hey, we want to talk to you about coming back. We'd love you for Royal Rumble, and because they assumed that I probably had some sort of a non-compete or something like that. And we're kind of floored when I was like, "No, man, I'm ready to go. Let's do it."
Did
Saturday.
you ever have a non-compete, even if it was for a month?
No.
Zero. You could have signed the next day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Nick said, "I really wish I knew that." Sorry, man. I didn't call or tell anybody. I just kind of laid low for a minute.
There's a first person there. So we get to find out more information. It's been a lot of discussion on when did this initiate, this conversation between CM Punk,
Yeah.
WWE return. This interview revealed that it all came together last second, and Nick Khan was the guy that got the ball rolling on it.
Yeah, I find that interesting that it was Nick Khan, because if for everyone who follows the industry and everything, usually that call, and I would imagine it probably would have came from Triple H, from Paul, or from someone, even a Bruce Pritchard or someone along the, maybe a Michael Hayes, or someone closer connected to the creative and the, I guess the actual business part of the wrestling part of it. But so that was interesting that Nick Khan made the call, which I think is pretty cool.
I think we've kind of, sorry to interrupt you, we kind of learned over the last couple weeks, last couple months that Nick Khan's more involved maybe than we thought.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's by design or by necessity, Brian. I think with everything that's going on, maybe it was necessity for him to be more involved in the process. So however it came about, good that it was Nick Khan, good that he's got his fingers on the pulse of the major stars in the industry. But I found it really interesting that there was no compete clause. And I think that's what
no non-compete.
Yeah, no non-compete. That's what Punk was saying. Like, well, I didn't tell anybody because I think we all, you and I included, right, in this IWC community, we hear it so much, and I've been a part of it, and everybody has a non-compete clause. So I think it was just an assumption made by everybody. Well, maybe there's no time to do it, and be back behind the scenes wars of character and contract infringement and people doing things illegally has always been, brought up. So I think everybody stayed away from it. So I think it was really interesting to find out wait a minute, you have no non-compete? And that's funny to hear, Punk say, no, I'm ready to go now. So pretty cool news to find out, even after the fact.
I don't, when those non-compete clauses are only valid for certain reasons, and I don't know if termination like that would void it. It's all in the verbiage of the non-compete, but there are different circumstances where that's not exactly valid.
And the truth of it is, if you choose to fight it, no one can keep you from making a living.
Right.
And I think maybe Regal was one of those guys back in the day with WCW, I think, about the non-competes. Because if you want to fight it in a court of law, if you want to pay the money and go through the hullabaloo of it and everything, no one can stop you from making a living. So the non-compete is more of a territorial thing, I think, and kind of like, okay, here's the cooling off period, kind of, 90 days to cool off from however you got let go, released, all those kind of things, and let everybody, try to move on from there. But those 90 days, to your point, are kind of, I think it's more smoke and mirrors than anything.
There are some things that came out of this. You mentioned Triple H. He actually did end up having a conversation with Triple H. After speaking with Nick Khan, and we obviously can't listen to the whole thing.
Right.
But after he spoke with Nick Khan, it went on to, I guess, immediately requested, basically. I don't know about immediately, but in the same conversation, said he wanted to speak with Triple H.
Yeah.
And they had a FaceTime around the holiday, apparently. And,
yeah.
CM Punk was like, I don't want to take you up your time during the holidays. And Triple H is like, oh, no. CM Punk thought a call, right? But Triple H thought it was important. They FaceTimed.
Yeah.
And I guess they buried the old hatchet, I guess you could say. And CM Punk even said they laughed about some of the silly things that they had problems with each other out before,
Yeah. I can believe that. And I think hats off. And again, we go back to when we talk about Punk a lot. The one thing that you can say is he's a smart businessman. And whether it was Nick Khan or whether it was Tony Khan or anybody else, you want to talk to the people that, and I don't know Nick Khan. I've never dealt with him, so I'm not saying anything out of school, but I want to deal with the person who knows me best. Nick Khan knows him as a character personality. He's going to be good for business, but Hunter knows him best.
I don't know the whole history, but it's possible that he's had other interactions with Nick Khan in the industry. I mean,
oh, okay. So
Nick Khan is an agent, right? Too. I mean, that's
right.
Nick Khan gets into the entertainment, sports, whatever you want to call it, industry based off of agency work,
right,
for athletes, for entertainers. So I'm not sure that would be their first. I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, probably not the first interaction. But I'd like to hear it from, to Punk's point, I'd like to hear from Hunter that, lack of a better way of saying it, I got your blessing to come back and we're going to be copacetic and we're going to be able to coexist in this newfound resurgence of his career at WWE. So I thought it was a good move. And I think it was interesting that Hunter, but to me, that's what Paul does. That's what Hunter does. If you're going to have a phone call, let's at least do it via FaceTime, Zoom, something where we can look at each other and understand, because, we could sit here with no picture on this show and you don't know what I'm doing or if I'm rolling my eyes while we're talking or my body language and stuff like that. So that's the next best thing to being in person. So
thanks, Liam, for the gift on TikTok. We're live across 8 different places. And it's so funny because, hundreds of people watching this.
Nice.
And just, I don't know, 2 people maybe on TikTok. So the TikTok algorithm absolutely hates this streaming software.
I bet.
I have a bunch of pro wrestling fan followers on there because of the content I post. But the TikTok algorithm absolutely hates this.
It's more video.
It just favors on, like, if we're not streaming directly through TikTok, right? We're using a software that's going out across the internet on 8 different platforms. It freaking TikTok blocks it, man. It hates it. So it's funny that when I see somebody pop in there and do that. So thank you, Liam. Everybody else, Scott. There's a bunch of comments. Chad Michael's on here on Facebook. We got people everywhere. But TikTok's always the least amount. It cracks me up.
Well, thank you to the 2 people on TikTok. Keep that going.
Okay, so just getting back to the topic here. I guess you could say proved wrong a lot of the wrestling. Like Dave Meltzer reported there and CM Punk had reached out. WWE wasn't interested. We heard a lot of things going around this time of Survivor Series. And apparently most of it wasn't true.
Right.
So for weeks leading up, CM Punk's camp had reached out. WWE wasn't interested. You go to find out later in this, and like I said, I know we've both been busy. I haven't got to put this together as well as I usually do other episodes, but later on in one of the episodes, he actually says that he was at home watching a lot of these cues and hints being dropped on Raw about him, and he had no prior conversation with WWE about returning. So he was seeing it in real time as we were, that them using his finishing move, them saying things that he would say on like Michael Cole or whoever's saying things. He did not know what, he was like, what's going on? People were calling him up saying, hey, what's up with this? He was like, I honestly don't know. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and it goes back to that, we talk about kind of like that misleading information that's out there through the internet, and certain people, talking about how they know, or they're in the know, or they heard, or someone told them. And a lot of that is like you and I have talked about it. It's put out there to mislead people.
Yeah.
Right? So it was really, really kind of interesting to hear how he's watching it in real time with everybody else going, I don't know. No one's talking.
Yeah.
No one's,
And like I said, if I double over into some things that we're going to show, I apologize, but nobody really knew about this. He didn't even tell his wife knew about it.
Right.
Lawyer knew about it. Stephen P. knew, I assume, is his lawyer, I believe. And WWE, just a few people, Nick Khan, Triple H,
Yeah.
But not really people knew. He just showed up, and that was literally when people found out. So you think that's the way to go? Because they also had a little bit of a conflict on some of the people that were in the match there real time.
I do think it's the way to go. Because
it would get out these days, right? And
yeah. For whatever reason, someone couldn't contain the fact that they knew something and could tell it to people before it happened. That's just human nature, and especially in this industry. Someone has to be the one to be more important than anybody else, to know what nobody else knows and to share it before it happens. I like when no one's aware of it. I like the days of guys hiding in a bus or a hotel for 6 hours and walking in 2 minutes before the music hits or anything like that. So I really liked it. And I love and we talked about this at length. I love the facial expressions, the body language, everybody that was watching it happen, just like we were going, what in the hell is going on here? And it was a great reaction. So I like that, where, let's keep things, we don't have to know everything.
I agree. Interesting that we finally got some of that information, though. We'd been talking about it, I guess just guessing about it. So like I said, I think this conversation closes up a lot of things, AEW included, the talk of the return. And then as we continue on to this episode, I think it answers some questions that a lot of people had. Good interview. Let's go ahead and jump back into it here. Let me get back to the next spot that I had marked here.
And I see all these other wrestlers getting on the plane and stuff like that. And then there's a whole gap. There's a generation of people that I never met that started pretty much right after I left, 2014, 2015. Nice lady by the name of Liv Morgan helped me find my earbuds that fell out of my pocket while I was sleeping on the flight. She was a sweetheart. She whole plane empties and she's like on her hands and knees, like looking around. She got small hands. She's like digging under the seats and and looking for stuff. And then my friend Bailey messaged me and she's like, "Oh, my friend Liv was on the flight with you. She says you were so nice to her." I was like, "Oh yeah." She's like, "Yeah, we have a show in Chicago. You should come visit." Throwing Bailey under the bus now. Yeah, it's all her fault. And then I laughed because I landed, got on the train, went home, and I was, I'm no wife, no dog. I don't have anything to do. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna go visit my friend Bailey. And I went.
And that was your first time back since 2014, backstage at a WWE event.
Yeah.
And did it feel good? Did you feel on edge? Because I thought when I asked you at the top here, like when did the ball start rolling? I thought maybe it started then, but you were still under contract, right, with AEW.
I went to visit people.
There was no ulterior motive.
I'm the old timer in the business, and there's a show in town. I wasn't trying to get a job or anything. I literally went, and I saw like the few people that I saw before I got thrown out. It was all, I saw Miz, saw Bobby Lashley, Baron Corbin, like everybody is just so nice and kind, that's the only reason I went, maybe for free catering. Yeah.
Were you mad that they asked you to leave, or did you understand?
I expected it. I expected that to go. I wasn't sure if Vince was there, if he was, I think he was doing stuff remote via Zoom, because this is in between, like Vince is gone, now he's
Sure.
back. And I didn't know the politics of things. I just went to go say hi to Bailey, a few other people.
Did anyone from AEW get mad that you were there?
Oh yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Don't want to talk about that.
I think the word betrayed was used, and I was just like, all right, man. Like, as a company, you're allowing guys to go on their television show to do things. I went backstage to say hi to friends. It's two completely different things. Like, if you're going to be mad about it, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So back to November.
Talks about that famous visit that we heard last summer,
Yep.
last spring, while he was on his hiatus and injury recovery, which we'll get into that later, from AEW. And he went back to just to visit, and he's called that he was a traitor, betrayed the company. Your thoughts on this incident? You build relationships, Bill, in any profession, working with people for so long.
Yeah.
And this is a weird industry where it's just like frowned upon.
Well, I'll say, here's an analogy that hopefully Hulk Hogan would never do that. Hulk Hogan, people know who he is. It'd be all over the place. And if Hulk was going to do it, Hulk would make it known. You know what I mean? And follow me here and see if you can pick up what I'm saying. Hogan doing it would be for a reason. And I'm not saying he did. I'm just using him as the example. Hogan would make sure that everybody knew for a reason before he jumped to WCW, he visited. You know what I mean? That's why he would do that. And it doesn't sound like that's what Phil was doing, what Punk was doing. He came out and said, listen, I was invited there. I don't look at it as betraying anyone because I'm not going to work. I'm not making it publicly known. I'm not trying to schmooze anybody. I'm not trying to get my foot back in the door. I work for this other company, but these are my guys. These are my girls. And yeah, I've been a part of it where you go and show up at something. Like, let's watch. Now, if he would have shown up if they would have showed him sitting in the audience watching the show, maybe you have a conversation then. Maybe then you go, listen, what are you doing to us here? What are you doing to me? I thought we had an understanding, but he didn't do anything. And I also find it interesting that the term thrown out is still used when he wasn't from what I understand from Punk's talks and from all of this, he wasn't thrown out. I was just asked to leave. I've been there when people have been thrown out.
There's a difference, right?
There's a huge difference of being thrown out and just being, hey, thanks for stopping by, but maybe it's time for you to go, kind of thing. I'm almost 100% positive without knowing he wasn't escorted out of the building by two people and walked up the ramp and put into his car and said, don't ever show your face here again. I don't think he was thrown out. And I think that's why they have the relationship they have now, because he was treated respectfully when he was there, and he was asked respectfully to go, and he respectfully left, which I wish everybody could do those things. But I don't think he betrayed anybody. But to his point, you let everybody else work for other companies and do all these things, and they show up wherever they want, with who they want, why they want, when they want.
Basically wrestle in Japan half the time. I love it.
Yeah, and they missed the AEW shots because they were injured working for someone else, or all these things. So I think betrayed was a pretty heavy word. And I think for anybody who follows CM Punk or has gotten to know him over the years, he really doesn't pull punches. He really doesn't play word games and stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe a little bit of semantics here and there, but he's not a guy to, I don't know, just put people in odd positions just to do it. So I go with what he said. I trust what he said. There was no ill intent. There was no nothing. My girl said, hey, you're in town. Stop by. I got nothing else going on. I stopped by. And he got to talk. And that's the thing. But you remember on all the reports on the internet, Punk's behind the scenes, and he got thrown out and all these things. And none of that stuff happened. Except he was behind,
Right.
pre-show.
WWE, it was a liability for WWE. That's why he was asked. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
Nobody wanted him there necessarily. It was just, we don't know what's going on. At that point, he was still under contract. So, but to be fair, I believe it was the week before that he was at TNA. He was, first of all, it was in Chicago, right? So it's not like he went flying or driving to another city to go
Right.
visit. But I know that he did visit TNA recently before that too, which sparked some, with some conversation there. I think that this is kind of, and we'll see this ongoing theme as throughout this conversation. It just shows the lack of communication and a disconnect with CM Punk and AEW. And I think as we go through this, you'll continue to see that. That's just another example of it. But so that was information that we, of course, didn't quite know. And let me see here. I'm trying to think of where did I just jump out from here? He also said from that
The other side of that too, the other side of it too is I find it interesting that, let's say, people lower on the card in AEW have free will to do what they want when they want, but then here's your top draw that you should trust and know he's not doing anything to hurt your brand or his brand. And that's the term you like to use, betrayed and everything else. So I find that all very, very interesting.
Yeah, it kind of contradicts what we'll get into here in a little bit, but I was going to finish up this section of it with, he talked about his interaction with Vince McMahon. It was very limited. He went to the corporate office. He was working out there, I guess. Vince McMahon came in to work out. They exchanged just very brief conversation. Hey, let's catch up later. Welcome back home. And they never did talk again, but for various reasons. Not one, because they just, what's happened with Vince McMahon, but two, because I don't think that was the top of CM Punk's priority list.
Right.
He's been pretty public about criticizing WWE, in particular Vince McMahon. So when he was asked the $1 million question about the Vince allegations, of course, he didn't. It was actually he did a really good job answering it. He didn't hold back anything, but he didn't. He actually compared it to the Chris Benoit thing in some regards to the impact it had on him.
Yeah.
Right. Or like how he would probably not know anything was going on. It's just not in his wheelhouse or not what he's involved in. He obviously didn't have a really close relationship with Vince McMahon like a lot of people do. We hear a lot of people say father figure and things like that. Even CM Punk alluded to that. But for him personally, they never had that relationship.
Right.
So he addressed that before moving on to the next topic. But yeah, apparently him, just for those people saying that, how involved Vince McMahon was getting back in the scene during this time, real involved. Well, in this particular thing, he wasn't involved in bringing CM Punk back. Yeah. And he didn't reach out to him, right away. Right. They just kind of ran into each other, financially speaking.
Yeah. And I think it goes to having your finger in the pulse of what's going on. And now knowing that Nick Khan was a big part in that. But I think for what Punk knew at the time, it was Hunter was the one he needed to speak to and deal with and kind of iron things out with, not Vince.
Yeah. Won't spend too much time on that. Let's pull it back up and let's go to the big other thing that everybody was talking about, the WrestleMania plans, the Royal Rumble plans, how all this came into play. There's a lot of speculation about that. Let me cue it up here and find it real quick.
You can say whatever you want, if only because I have so much respect for the business.
Yeah.
So I will ask you the question. You can tell me to fuck off.
Okay.
What was the plan for you for WrestleMania? That's what everyone. That's like the $64 million question at this point, because they want to try to we want to try to put the pieces together. Like, was this the original plan? Did it go here? Did it go then there because of the injury? So could you tell us, as of Royal Rumble, what was the plan for you for April 6th and 7th?
It changed a lot, because I came back in and I told Triple H, I was like, look, man, I'm not here to steal anybody's spotlight, take anybody's main event. Like, I get it. I was pissed 10 years ago when I had to sit through Rock Cena 2 years in a row, and now, but everything's different. Mania's 2 nights now. So more people get that opportunity. And for me, it was always just about the booker in my head. You cannot become main event talent unless you work with other main event talent. You cannot become main event talent unless you work in the main event spots that are normally afforded only for the main event talent. Right. And that's just what I craved, was more knowledge, more experience. I want to be that guy. I want to see if I can be that guy, because I know I can. I know there's people that don't think I can. So that's more motivation to show them that, yes, 100%, I am that guy. The plan, I think, was going to be me and Seth.
For his belt?
Yeah.
Would it have been main event of night one?
I believe so. Yeah.
Which would,
but again, I came in and I said, I'm not asking questions. you're
I saw
the
that
boss,
in your
I'm-
video blog, the one leading up to Royal Rumble that they put together, where you're on the treadmill and you're like, before I used to stress about X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
Now you're just kind of letting.
What am I doing at TV?
Right.
Where are we going with this? The booker in my head. I'm looking 6 months, 8 months, 12 months into the future. Like, what are we doing? And now, after doing all that and all the experiences I've had, I'm just kind of just like, all right.
Did you like that though? If that was it, would you have been happy with that?
Me and Seth.
Eye-opening, man.
So what a lot of people said they had to throw a curveball, they had to do this or that. Turns out everything played out, and we'll get into his injury more, but he just finished the match hurt.
Yeah, and I think the smartest thing that he's done recently is have that conversation. By the way, I thought this was a great interview with
Yeah,
with Ariel. I thought it was
Lonnie.
great.
Yeah, just for context, people, he does have he's been in the MMA reporting for, I don't know, a couple decades now.
Yeah.
He does have a little bit of a relationship with CM Punk from that. CM Punk actually does not do hardly any press
Right.
media stuff. So one, that shows you the trust that CM Punk has in him. Two, that shows you that the trust WWE has in Ariel, because
Exactly.
he's there to promote WrestleMania, right? Get people talking about WWE for WrestleMania. I like how they did it at the beginning of the week to kind of get that out of the way
Yep.
before we get into the weekend. Not doing it on a Friday right before. That's all everybody would be talking about. But there's a reason they did that, and there's a reason they had this relationship with him. He used to work with AEW pretty closely, but they've since basically boycotted his existence because he was critical about a few things, and he asked Tony a few tough questions. And he certainly did CM Punk here too. WWE had to know these questions are going to be asked.
Right. And but the trust in the person asking the questions and the person who's answering the questions. This is your interview. Answer it, but be mindful of how you portray yourself and the company. Tell your truth. Just be mindful. And not one time in this interview do I feel like Punk buried anyone, AEW, anybody. He just told the story that was being asked. But really, really interesting to hear his demeanor now, openly admitting, which most of us in the business would never openly admit. We're always thinking ahead. We're always trying to be the booker, and the internet wrestling community, we're all bookers, right? Everybody knows what's right and wrong and who should be doing what. But Punk's letting you in saying, I'm that guy. I was that guy for so many years. I wasn't questioning it. I was questioning the knowledge, and why can't I be that guy? Just because that person doesn't think so. We can talk about this forever. But the fact that he opens up and goes, yeah. And now coming back after everything I've been through, especially in the past couple of years recently, I'm just going to kind of go with what they give me. Now, he's still going to ask questions because he's a professional athlete. Happens at baseball, football, basketball. Somebody's going to question their spot, their reasoning for doing things, or why am I not pitching on this night, or why am I not starting here, or, all these things. But now he's saying he's learned throughout the years some of the things that were important aren't as important, and let's do it the way you want to do it, and he'll still remain true to who he is as a person and a character, and the company will remain true to who they are. So I thought that so far, and this interview was outstanding. So I'm really caught up in it, and I'm gonna say openly, I never had ill will or a bad thought about Punk. I always thought, and I think I've said it here on our show a few times, I thought he went into business for himself. But listening to this, you can see how you can take it that way. But now understanding it, I'll be the first one to say, like, thanks for enlightening me, dude. Thanks for letting me in on the thought process, because now I have a better understanding of everything that's coming up and the things that have happened,
This is the next area we get into is kind of talking about that, and it shines some more light on some of those misconceptions, or I guess it's always how you interpret it, right? I mean,
right.
But the next area we'll get into here is the AEW conversation. This is a lengthy one, so we'll stop it here and there. But we often wondered what happened with the Jack Perry incident. We later find out, and we'll cover it a little. We'll play it. But the original issue he had the year before is all in DA. He can't talk about it.
Right.
This is not. And I'm sure they smartened up after the first time, right? We're not signing any damn NDAs
Right.
from a legal standpoint. But yeah, so let me pull it back up here and we'll get into that. He talks about the transportation issues that he had, and he wasn't sour and bitter about it necessarily. He got to ride across the town. He got that experience. He got to see the fans, but he couldn't help but think about how unprofessional it was for AEW to do that.
Right.
And kind of leave him hanging there to fend for himself, which he didn't have a problem with doing, but just the situation itself. Let me get back in here.
You're not expecting that.
Kind of goes back to, and I'll get it playing here, the Poke and the Bear theme.
Yeah.
You know, you can't help but wonder why they did these things, when they did these things, and how the timing of it all played out. We'll get into some of the AEW talk here. We'll stop every few minutes. This is quite a lengthy section, but
Where are you backstage? Jack Perry's on screen and he says, real glass, why don't you cry about it? Where are you when this is said?
I was in my locker room.
Did you feel like that was directed at you?
Yes.
Why?
Okay, it obviously was directed at me.
Well, because, okay, so for those that may not know, apparently he had a trip planned. He wanted to use glass. You were consulted. You said, why would you use glass? Correct me, you lived it. So I'm trying to bring people up to
So
speed.
this is one of those things where it's just like, there's all these rumors about NDAs.
Yes.
There's a big difference between not being allowed to talk about some shit or just not wanting to talk about some shit. I don't necessarily want to litigate this again.
You say again, you've never talked about it publicly. But
No,
you mean like
I guess I
don't get
haven't,
on-
but that's the thing. So Tony's big idea was a separate show. We're going to separate everybody. And I said, that'll never work. Just let me go. Just get me out of here. Just pay me my money. I've already been off TV. I hurt this arm. Just get me out of here. You know, no, can't let you go. Why? Just let me go. Who cares? It's best. I mean, these guys don't want me here. This isn't a real business. This isn't a business predicated on making money, drawing money, selling tickets, you know, doing business. It's not what it was sold to me as. So let me go. No, I can't let you go. I'm going to do this new show. You're going to have blah, blah, blah. And then the second day we have this show, I'm sitting in catering, minding my own business. And Tony Schiavone comes and gets me. And he's like, hey, I really need your help. And I was like, what? Jack is, cussing me out, and he's cussed out Mike Mansuri, and he cussed out Daryl from production, and he's cussing out the doctor right now. Why? What? And I was immediately like, dude isn't supposed to be here. I was told people are getting separated, so there's not problems, and you don't want me involved in this, because just like everything else I've explained before, like, y'all need to handle this, because if you don't, I'm going to handle it, and you're not going to like the way I handle it.
Thanks for letting me know, Bill. We'll pause it here for a second. We'll talk about this. That is said several times throughout this interview,
Yeah.
that if they don't handle it, he will, and they're not going to like how he handles it.
Well, I think it's a fair statement to let people know, if you're asking me to handle it, then you may not like the way, and I'll use myself as the example. I was in charge of A, B, C, D, and E. So if someone came to me and said, can you handle this? Then you should understand how it's going to be handled. And then there shouldn't be any repercussions or afterthought. And I feel like Punk's telling them, you don't want me to handle it, because the way I'm going to handle it and the way you handle things are two different ways of doing things. And clearly, from what Punk is saying, it's not the business that he thought he was coming back into. This is a different run company, and not the business, like he said, selling tickets, putting asses in seats and drawing money and all these things. So he already knows that he doesn't want to get involved in any more than he has to.
This validates some of the thought process out there, being that the roster split per se, and it was a very limited split,
Right.
obviously strategically done. This television show Collision was created for CM Punk.
Right.
It was created for CM Punk to be in part managed by CM Punk, or have a big part in it. It was CM Punk's show. This validates all that, which I think we knew. So that also validates Warner Brothers Discovery's relationship with CM Punk, Phil Brooks. They're on board with launching another show, and I assume with the understanding that this would how it play out, as far as CM Punk being a major player in it all the way around.
Right. But it sounds like a lot of people didn't give the full disclosure of what was going on, including people didn't give it to Punk. So it seems like there's a lot of misleading conversations that went on. But the one thing you can't question is if the man's telling you, you don't want me to handle it because it's going to be, because there's already turmoil, right? There's a reason why there's already a separate show and there's going to be certain talents that will never see each other and work together and all these things. And now he's telling him, you don't want me to do this, right? And this is the part where he's talking with Shivani as we're in the interview. And so I feel like you're telling people, leave me out of it. I don't want to get involved because if I get involved, it's going to be a different thing.
Right.
You know?
Let's jump back in.
Prophetic words. So he's begging me, now please, he drags me out of catering. I go up. Hook and Jack are doing an angle. I don't know anything about Jack going on vacation. All I know is there's a litany of people that don't want, they work 1 day a week and they don't want to. So they want to show up and wrestle and then film vignettes and then sit at home for 4 weeks. Great. Not my company. Do what you want. But not on my show. That was my attitude. So I said, Tony, do you really want me doing this? Yeah. And I walked up to Jack and he was sitting in a car. What he wanted to do, it was a rental car. What he wanted to do was smash the window of the rental car with a pipe. And I was just like, it's a rental car. And I very politely, because I like Jack, I was just like, Doc's told you no. Daryl's told you no. Mike's told you no. Shivani's told you no. And now I have to tell you no. And apparently you've cussed them all out. So I'm telling you no. We don't do that here. If you want to do this, go to Wednesday and do it. Right? And he had no problem. He said, okay. He said, well, I just thought it was a really cool idea. And I said, it might be, but it's a rental car. The boys are running for the boys. You're going to smash the window of a rental car and you're going to return it with no fucking window. And now whatever national budget hurts, whatever is going to be like, don't rent cars to pro wrestlers anymore. This is a thing that's happened.
Right.
This is, so I wasn't trying to throw my weight around. I wasn't like, this is my show and you gotta get out of here. I was just like, this is fucking dumb, man. And he wanted to do it so he didn't have to fly back to Canada. And I just, sorry, man, we're privileged to be in this business. We're privileged to do this for a living. Like, I get it. I didn't want to go to Canada either. All the flights were delayed, canceled. Everybody's travel sucked. But to come to this new show when everyone's supposed to be separated to get rid of all the drama and then, swearing at the doctor because the doctor's like, it's real glass. You're going to, like shit's going to go in your eye. Like, and I get it. I used to be that kid that was like, young and I want to do this, but there's a safe way to do it. And I politely explained that to him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cuss at him. I was just like, I very much just said, we don't do that here. This is Saturday. It's a different show. If you want to do stuff like this, do it on Wednesday. That was it. I didn't think there was going to be a problem. He obviously took something very business-minded, very personally. And that's fine, because I've done that before too. But it's very much who he's friends with. And, shit never got squashed. Nobody's in charge. And it turned into what it turned into.
So he says that, clearly a shot at you, as you said. Match is over. He goes to the back. What happens?
I went to Tony and I was just like,
Which Tony, by the way?
Con.
Okay.
And I was like, please handle that. Like, please. And he was like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, I'm not telling you what to do. Just be the boss, please. Like, I'm tired of this shit. Like I told you this was a mistake. I told you separate shows wasn't going to work. And now we're all here and, please handle it. Because if you don't, you're not going to like the way I handle it.
We'll jump back in here in a second, but common theme going on here.
Yeah. Leave me out of it and somebody be the boss. And we've talked about it and a lot of people, and to your point of our last episode, a lot of people who do what we do, podcasters, interviewers, are now saying the same thing. Like, for a long time, it was the boys' club. Tony wanted to be or was perceived as one of the boys. The inmates were running the asylum. There was no leadership. There was no chain of command. It was, hey, pick and choose and do what you want, just like Punk said. And he came into that misguided philosophy of that's not really how the business works if you want to be successful. But that's the theme now is like, be the boss. And and fast forward to today's news or this week's news and everything. Now that he's being the boss, he's getting scrutinized for that, but that's a different conversation. But it comes back to like Punk's not telling us anything we didn't know. He's just enlightening us to how this all went down. And the fact that it went down this way, to me, goes to where there has to be more of a conversation of who the hell is the boss here? Who, other than having being the guy who is the only creative and the only decision maker and sits in the thing, he's got to be on camera and all these things and tweets and all these things. Who truly is the boss who's going to run this thing? And this is why you have so many people who try hard and don't get the backing. And then you have talent that can do what they want. And then you have a guy like CM Punk, who's seasoned, been around the block a few times, has a different mindset than a lot of people in this business. And he's telling you, please don't, from the way he's saying it, how he's like, I'm letting you know that if you ask me to handle this or you put me in this, which is something you told me I wouldn't have to do because we were going to be split to begin with, it's not going to go down the way you want. And this is where they're at.
Again, a backstory, and I can't speak to the situation exactly, but Jack Perry is brought in and friends with the elite Young Bucks.
But let me ask you this. I don't know Jack Perry, never met him. Don't know anything about him other than what I've seen on TV and then what I've heard. But I will say this as a veteran of this business, who the hell is Jack Perry to be calling shots? Other than if he thinks that he's friends with the two EVPs, that he's got that kind of stroke. And if he does, who's in charge of making sure that relationship is understood? And that's where I think Punk's coming from with this whole thing.
And the crazy part about this to me is Tony Khan, I don't know if he's ever missed a TV event. So Tony Khan is either there or going to be there, I'm assuming. Right. I haven't heard of Tony Khan not being there for a single show.
Right.
He travels all around the world for the soccer and that. He's a workhorse as far as the hours he puts in. So why Tony Khan's not involved in this? Obviously, I know you have to have managers for a reason, but Tony Khan hasn't really set up a good structure. So he's put it in a position where he's got to be the one that manages this stuff. Let's jump back in, though.
What happened?
Jack came back from his match. I was the next match. I'm sitting there. I got people with me. I'm not going to say who they are, because I got a lot of friends who work there, and I wish them all well, and I don't want them to be punished because they're friends with me, And I walk up to him, and I'm just like, Jack, why do you insist on doing this dumb internet shit like on TV, And he's just like, well, if you got a problem about it, do something about it. And I was just like, man, come on, man. I would fucking kill you. Like, what are we doing? And it just, Bill says, sometimes you just can't let you get close. I thought I was doing a responsible thing. I didn't punch anybody. I just choked somebody a little bit. Samoa Joe was there, told me to stop. And then I quit. I turned to Tony and I said, this place is a fucking joke, man. You're a clown. I quit. I went to my room, and then Joe and Jerry Lynn came and got me, and they're like, let's just go out there and kill it. And I was just too fired up, and I'm fired up now, and I'm probably going to regret, talking about all this shit, but that's what happened.
Okay. So for those that don't know, you actually did go out and wrestle.
Yes.
Is that all just a blur for you, that match? Do you even remember?
No, that match is I was just like, this is the last time I'm ever going to wrestle Samoa Joe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is my last match in this company.
You knew that?
Yeah. Well, I quit. I said, I fucking quit.
So why did you even go out?
For Joe.
Right.
For Joe, for Paul Turner, the referee, for Jerry Lynn, the agent on the match, because I, respect him, and I thought it was the professional thing to do. All the fans, a lot of fans there.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of them to see me, so just go out there and give them a show.
100,000 fans, right?
I don't know. You have to check the turnstile count.
And so you go to the back. What happens then? Like, your match is over. Great match. What happens?
They told me Jack was told to leave. And I was like, do I got to leave? I was like, I want to watch the show. And they're like, no, it's fine. And then, I don't know, a couple matches later, a very nice man by the name of Sam, he was in charge of security. He was like, what are your plans for the rest of the night? And I was like, I was just going to shower and just hang out, watch the show, because I the whole solo locker room thing's fucking lame. I had Joe, I had House of Black, I had all these guys with me. And I was just like, I just want to watch their match, you know? And he just kind of looked at me and I went, is it easier for you and your job if I leave? And he's just like, yeah, it might be. He's like, but nobody's telling you got to go. Like and I was just like, well, Sam, I'm a man to man. I'm not trying to fuck up your day. You got a job to do. So if it's easier for you, if I split, I'll split. And then I went and got Nando's for a bunch of the boys and went to my hotel room. And, you know, when the show was over, they came by and we ate chicken.
Tremendous spot, by the way.
Nando's is great.
Spicy, the rice.
Oh yeah.
The chips.
Peri, buddy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Did you have to have a conversation? Because what was told to us was you were fired with cause. So you said quit. The devil is in the details there, but did you have a conversation with Tony to say, okay, this is it, we're done. There's not going to be, you have not talked to him?
Nope.
Really? The last time you talked to him was backstage at Wembley?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
He went on air several days later and said he's never been afraid for his life like this. Been going to shows for 30 years. Felt fearful for his life, for the safety of the workers. When you saw this, what is your reaction when you see this? Not only was it it was a promo on TV, but then he also spoke to the crowd, right? There was a clip that surfaced of him talking to the people in your town, right? I believe it was in Chicago, just outside.
Yeah.
When you saw that version of the story being put out, what is your reaction?
I mean, I can't tell you what Tony felt or what he was thinking, but I never did anything that would make him fear for his life. But you know, he's who he is.
Covered a lot of ground there at that one. Finishing up the Jack Perry saga there. Like I said before, probably put a bookend on that one for good, I'm sure. Well, not everybody's going to talk about it a little bit, but as a whole mainstream thing.
Yeah.
Plays out, and I think, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said he didn't punch anybody. He just did a little choke or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but to me, that's, I don't want to say this is where we get in trouble. I don't want to say that's part of the business, but that's always been the thing. You know, okay, man to man, what's the problem? And if, you know, to his point, using that Chael's son's a great analogy, right? He doesn't let anybody get too close because then you have to defend yourself. So while you didn't punch anybody, you definitely felt the need to put hands on him, right? And it's not saying that Jack didn't put hands on Punk either. My question in that whole part that we listened to is, why did security say you don't have to leave, but it might make my job easier? Was Punk being threatened, or were people threatening, you know, to retaliate? I mean, so while there's a lot of unanswered questions, I don't need to know the answers. To me, Punk's laying it out. Like, and I'm sure there's a few Punkisms in there that, you know, people could change to something else. But for Tony Khan to say he feared for his life, maybe because he's never been in a confrontation with someone where someone has actually stood up to him and said, listen, you're a joke, or this company's a joke and what you're doing and I don't need you. Maybe that was the fear of the oh my gosh moment where someone's talking to me for reals. But I think it puts a lid on this thing. And I'd like to think that after this, everybody stops talking about this and move on to what you're doing. But what I got from this interview was, here's the part of Punk that I can now appreciate more. And now listening and knowing what we know from not being involved, right? You know, we know the information we know because it's out there, but him laying it out there for you kind of makes it more fathomable, right? More palatable. You can understand it more. So, like I said, hats off to Phil for coming out and doing the interview the way he did it. And like you said, he's getting fired up, but he's not. I from what I've known of him and been around him for the time I did, he's not a very high voltage guy anyway. He's very, very even keeled. I think even in a pissed off nature, right? We all have that moment where we throw a tantrum or something, but he's not a very high voltage guy. So what's more intimidating than a guy who's looking you in your eye very calmly, letting you know that you're not going to like the way this is going. But, you know, the fact that it was built up from Tony Khan himself to be more than what Punk was saying it was. And a lot of people were allowed to talk on it. A lot of people weren't. A lot of stories and all these things. And So I find it interesting, but I really, truly, honestly hope this thing is dead in the water.
Get a little bit more to cover, but I think it's crazy that Jack Perry, CM Punk may not have had like the most amazing UFC career, but he did train to be a professional fighter in a great gym
Yeah,
for several, I don't know, 2 years, I think at least.
yeah.
Why would Jack Perry go?
Well, but who's Jack Perry to tell Tony Schiavone, who's been in the business almost as long as Moses?
Sell managers. Yeah. I mean, these guys are managers there as far as I know.
And, Schiavone has a big role to play in the back.
And I don't mean manager as in I'm talking actual backstage manager.
Management, yeah.
Yep.
And so who's Jack Perry to be causing all this? And clearly in all his years, Schiavone's never had to put up with that kind of nonsense and going, hey, somebody help me out here because I'm not sure where this is supposed to go. But apparently, no matter what your position is or what your role is, the inmates are still running the asylum.
There's one more thing that I don't think I have it marked to listen to. There was another instance before this. Obviously, we talked about the first falling out, but before that even, Hangman Adam Page and Punk had a little bit of a dispute. Long story short, were going to have a promo in the ring. They talked about beforehand what would be discussed, kind of the guidelines laid out the promo. Hangman went completely off script and just started trying to, I guess you could say, bury Punk.
Yeah.
And Punk talked about how it was really odd for him because for multiple reasons. He said he didn't get Cole Cabana fired or demoted and that's why he thought he was just trying to be noble and stick up for his friend. But he thought in the context and the situation in which it was done was a little ridiculous. You're trying to draw money. You need CM Punk to look good for the rival that you're going to have. And he just thought from a business standpoint, put everything else aside. If you're upset with him, you're sticking it for your friend. He just thought that was a really weird and not very smart way to go about it for the business.
Yeah. It comes back to who's in charge of this, or, hey, you're Hangman Adam Page. You can do what you want and everybody will have to understand it. And I think that's fine I think it's fine for the roster they started with, if that makes sense, before you bring in and just for clarity, I'm not sure Chris Jericho would let Hangman Page get away with that either, going into business for themselves like that. But I think with the talent pool that they started with AEW, that maybe Hangman Adam Page and the EVPs and, the Omegas and all these people that were running the show, they were cool with that. But now you're bringing in people that are seasoned. Some are salty. Some have, a reputation in the business for being who they are. And now you're doing that and to Punk's thing. That's not what he signed up for. And you're right. How do you bring a guy in? You especially, that you're a big Punk fan and you were so excited to see him come in. And it kind of, to me, I thought it deflated your whole image of everything because of how it all went down. And I think that's what happened to the wrestling community. Everybody was let down on this whole thing.
Yeah, definitely everybody had their own agenda for sure.
Yeah.
And none of that was good for the big picture. Let's jump back into the $1 million question here. I'll cue it up on Tony Khan as a boss.
Describe what it's like working for Tony.
Man, it's a loaded question, because I don't want this to be, I don't like the drama, but I mean, it's the truth is the truth. Like he's not a boss. He's a nice guy, and I think ultimately that is a detriment to the company, but it's not my company. I'm an outsider. I thought I was brought in to, sell merchandise and tickets and draw, numbers for pay-per-views and stuff. And I clearly did that. But that's not what the place was about. And some people didn't like that.
Is there any part of you that's always like, man, I'm 45. I'm tired of this shit.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
And why?
I mean, did you saw my exasperated press conference when I'm eating Mindy's?
Yes, of course.
Drinking Spindrift.
So
that is very much a guy who's just, I'm too old for this shit.
So you just talked about how this all started.
Also in this conversation, there's this quote by CM Punk, and I thought it was one of the most telling things of this conversation. He said, this is a quote, "If you are more happy with the fact that some goof said you had a 5-star match, but the building is only 1/4 full, then we're not in the same business."
All I can say is boom. Bingo. Bullseye. Exactly. And I think it's two different businesses. It's you can't start a football team and change all the rules to the game and change how it's played and how you can dress and what all these things, and then claim you're still in the same business. So you can't be mad when the NFL runs you out of business. Just an analogy, right? You cannot
gotcha.
start a professional wrestling company. No one's going to recreate ECW. They went against the grain of everything except the business model. It was still handled the same. Your stars were handled the same. It was but they became part of it. The problem is that AEW is the new version of ECW, except the boys are running the asylum. There was a boss in ECW, his name was Paul Heyman. Then there were guys who were underneath him, Tommy Dreamer and all these guys that were the voices and the yes and no and put the stamp of approval. You brought CM Punk and you were super, super excited when he was coming back. And you're like, yeah, business is about to pick up because Punk means business. He draws people. He makes these numbers come. That's when you brought him in, but you brought him into a company because you could afford to bring him in. You didn't know what to do with him, but you could afford, you could physically pay him what he wanted and maybe mislead him into thinking he could help build this company. So I wonder if the same approach has been taken with Copeland. The same approach has been taken with Chris. So my question is, would people get away with this with Christian, with Copeland, with Jericho, or do they only get away with the people they think they can? And because now Tony's friends with everybody, he thought Punk was his friend, and their relationship was stronger than Punk's relationship with this business. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so Punk said, that's not why I went there. He could have joined Impact Wrestling at the time. He could have went, but, maybe he was misled a little bit. But Tony made sure he did anything he wanted. And we all know Tony Khan's a fan. We're all fans of the business. But like you said, there's no boss. And there's no one willing to stand up and say, I'm the freaking boss.
It's clearly under the impression that he was there to help, though.
So you not once, and correct me if I'm wrong, not once, but twice you got rid of CM Punk in the same company. But you've got a Jack Perry, you've got some other guys, and it's not a knock on any of these other guys either, because that's the culture they're being raised in this business. Who I feel sorry for in the future when they try to go somewhere else and realize the world doesn't work that way. The world of professional wrestling doesn't work that way. And for the guys who know it doesn't work that way, they keep their mouths shut and they watch it. And a lot of them just are collecting paychecks. But Punk clearly is not that guy who just wants a paycheck. He felt misled. He spoke up. He did what he had to do. And he's out. And he's back where he wants to be and where people want him. And they're going to hold his hand to the fire of putting asses in seats, selling merchandise, and bringing up numbers. And that's all he wants.
Which he already has.
Right. To prove his point. That's what he wants. Why did Cody leave AEW? Because he wasn't doing and getting what he wanted out of it. So he had to go search for it. Where did he go back to? WWE. But he's putting asses in seats. He's drawing numbers. He's selling merchandise. He's making the brand bigger, better, and moving forward. So you can't downplay Punk's reasoning and lift Cody's reasoning. You can downplay Punk's reasoning, but lift Jake Cargill's reasoning. You can't. Punk's spelling it out for you. And why Shivani deals with it is beyond me, but
agree with that.
Sure,
night.
sure.
People are still talking about it.
That's 2011.
Yeah.
It's been 13 years. So you do that, you say all of that, and it's fascinating going back and watching it because it's clear that Tony's a little bit uncomfortable sitting next to you.
Nothing he'd never heard before.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he didn't know that it would come out right then and there.
Should have handled it.
What happens when that scrum is over?
Went home, got surgery, got my arm fixed.
Can you not talk about that?
I don't think I can.
That's Brawl Out, right?
Yeah.
That's the one where there is an actual...
Yeah.
Is there anything you could tell us about that?
I didn't have to sign an NDA for anything I did wrong.
Interesting. What does that mean?
It means I have nothing to hide, and I don't give a shit if people,
So just for the record, once and for all, can you tell us what happened? Or, okay.
there's
Oh, there is.
yeah.
Oh, for that particular one.
There's an NDA in place
Okay.
for that one. Yeah.
You did speak to Mark Ramundi when you came back, right?
Yeah.
Of ESPN, my pal, and you did say that you kind of regretted the way that was all handled. Is that
Sure. I mean, I think you can go back and be like, well, I wish I never did the scrum. Scrums are stupid anyway.
Would you prefer if there just wasn't a scrum?
Yeah, those things are really cringe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's pro wrestling. Maybe do what, like I did one like the day I came back. I was like, well, this is a big deal. Like I get it, but the problem you have with pro wrestling is just anybody with a Twitter calls themselves a reporter or a journalist or whatever. And I experienced it firsthand, the amount of misinformation that came out based on that. And again, I will go back to, you want to believe all that shit? Yeah, I'm Bruiser Brody and I'm running around, I'm running through the hallways and I'm just fucking sucker punching people and all that. Great, man. Awesome. Believe it. Because I'm over here and I'm making money off it and you ain't.
Mm.
Believe it. But it's just the amount of just lies and bullshit. It feels a little bit good to say that a lot of it is lies and bullshit, but everyone's gonna, the people that don't like me based on that stuff, they don't like me anyway.
Jump ahead here.
In your mind, when that was done, did you think that perhaps you were done with the company?
Yeah.
You would have preferred that. And for the record, did you injure your tricep? Can you tell us that? If not, I understand. In the incident, or was it in the match? Okay. Damn.
Yeah.
Will you ever be able to talk about this?
I don't know.
Is there a? Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know how. I've never had to tell anyone.
Why does anybody want to talk about it?
Well, just for the record, just to know.
It's grown into this ridiculous thing, Like, again, just go ahead and believe what you want.
So you go away, and it's kind of good timing because obviously you never want to get hurt, but we don't know if you're suspended, if you're hurt, if you're recovering from surgery, you just disappear. Did you ever get close to being let go at that point? You said at the beginning of all this, you said, please, let's just do it here.
Well, nobody in the company spoke to me for, I don't know, six months.
How's that possible?
I don't know.
Not a soul.
Paid for my surgery, booked my surgery. Thankfully, Dr. Sampson, who I knew from WWE, I have a good rapport with, like he helped me with that. But like I was on my own and all that stuff. And, if you think I deserve to be, fired or treated like that, that's your opinion. It's none of my business what you think of me. But doing this one and the recovery for this one, based on how the recovery went for that one, I'm just like, man, it's night and day. And it's almost the comparison between, places where there's structure and there's protocols and there's professional people in charge of things. And I'm not having to research and find a PT spot. I had no help, like nothing. And that's insane to me.
A lot to unpack with that one. And this was a point that hit me pretty hard. It's basically implied without being able to say it that he's injured in this fight with the Elite backstage, whatever happened. He has a torn bicep from it. He gets no help at all from the company on rehabbing it, paying for the surgery. He funds the surgery himself, does all the rehab, has to completely on his own on this. In the meanwhile, they go 6 months without speaking to him after this night.
That's the part that is absolutely insane. Had
you heard that up until that point?
I never heard that. I've never heard of that ever. And this isn't about me, but I'm the only one I can use as the example that I feel comfortable with.
No, he didn't say WWE screwed him over with the staph infection. He just didn't like the way they medically treated it.
The way they treated it, yeah.
They didn't
never said he got screwed over. Yeah.
They did not treat it. They didn't just not pay for his injury.
Yeah.
They paid for the shit that happened to him there. AEW did not.
Yeah, I'm just lost on the whole, no one talked to me for 6 months. I've been in Puerto Rico, I've been in Japan and Mexico, Europe, around the world. And if you're injured, whether it be due to...
If you're injured at work, is what you're trying to say.
At work, whether it's in ring, slipping on the floor behind the thing, getting out of a plane, twisting your knee, if it's anything that remotely affects your work and your work-related business with the company, they're on the phone with you every day. Someone's checking up on you. Hey, what is it? And to Punk's point, like I can say, I never had to book anything. They took care of it. They let you know, hey, here's where it is. Here's your timeline. Here's the thing. And okay, hey, we'll check in on you in a couple of days or whatever the case is. And it's not a kumbaya because we like you. That's how businesses are run.
Yeah, let me cut you off there. Just from a management standpoint, what I do, aside from creating content, you have to pay for somebody gets hurt at work. So I'm sure that from a legal standpoint, that came into whatever the fallout of this was. There's no doubt in my mind. He can't talk about it, but that had to come into play with this. I mean, completely. You can't get hurt at work, whether you're messing around or not.
Right.
They're liable for it.
Right. Someone has
your
to
part on
answer
their
for that.
exactly.
And I think the fact that no one did should have riled him up even more. But like
I'm
he
sure it
said,
did.
he used the two arms, right? The right one and the left one. This one I got fixed, but it was to happen with this kind of company. Here's this one that I'm coming back from. I'm healthy. I'm feeling good. All the things that everybody's in contact with. You brought this man in to raise your business, or did you bring him in to say you brought Punk back in the wrestling? That's really what it comes down to. From the scrum to anything else we talked about it, Tony Khan sat in there and sat there like a deer in the headlights, like a little kid who didn't have an answer and no one was giving him the answers. And he sat there and just let everything happen. And it sounds like with this thing that he cannot talk about, he just let everything happen until someone has to be accountable. And then either Tony's getting bad advice or however it was handled. But
how does the HR department or the legal department not have a conversation?
Who's running this thing? And I just never have heard of someone not being, listen, whether you're paid Punk $100 a year or $1 million a year, you're paying someone. How in 6 months do you not even have contact with them? How is someone in your organization not have contact with them? Where's he at? Where are we at? What can we do? Hey, in the meantime, can we, sort things out? Hey, maybe it's this thing. I don't know. I just don't understand that mentality.
Yeah. Let's Chad Michaels asking more questions here.
Michael.
So WWE checking on Punk to make sure he's okay with staph infection. I thought you said the doctors they sent him to. Yeah, the doctor on site that traveled with them was one he was dealing with. That's also
Right, wasn't Samson. Right.
Yeah, he also had a huge lawsuit with him. Yeah, he got a second opinion on it, and that's when they discovered the staph infection.
Right.
Were they checking in on him? Well, I don't know about that, Chad Michael, but they were certainly paying for it.
Now, I believe if they weren't checking on him, Chad, that legal was checking on him. Somebody
WWE's a
always
corporation.
checking on someone,
I mean, he did say he went a quite long time without talking to them.
Yeah.
But they had reached out to him originally, and he just said, "No, I'm not coming back." I think that's when the legal ball got rolling for WWE to terminate.
But then but to that point, he didn't need to talk to anybody because it was legal talking. There was always a conversation as opposed to 6 months with no communication whatsoever. You know what I really find interesting? And it's just me trying to put a little levity into this conversation. I would love to hear what Punk and Cody have to say about their former employer.
Cody Rhodes came on his show a few days later, and he basically said he had a different experience with CM Punk, obviously, and that CM Punk has his own opinion, but he didn't quite look at it quite as harshly, obviously, as CM Punk.
Well, that was
CM Punk was still working for AEW after the fight happened where he got injured. Yeah, for another year.
Yeah, still on paper. Yeah.
Yep. Weird. I don't know how you have somebody hurt and you don't.
Yeah. Who's held accountable for that?
I'm sure, like I said, from a legal standpoint, that had to play into it. There's no way you just don't treat somebody's injury.
And then that's why there's an NDA. And that's why he just shrugged his shoulders.
You're exactly right. That's why there's an NDA. I'm sure that comes into play here. We'll jump back in here. Only got a few more things here.
The negatives.
Really?
I look at it more something you don't consider that is a possibility. I worked with Sting in the Greensboro Coliseum. Like, it's fucking wild. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think the positives definitely outweigh, the negatives.
Really?
I look at it more like I thought I was coming in to help business. If I could teach something, great. And I think I was just brought in for other reasons, like their business. I know a lot of people are gonna the upset, it's just not predicated. It's not a real business. It's not about,
What do you mean by that?
it's not about selling tickets. It's not about drawing money. It's not about making money. It's just not.
What's it about?
I don't know.
Really?
I think having good matches, maybe. And there's nothing wrong with that. I was recently at an indie show.
Another great question asked there. Another great follow-up. No regrets. So what we jumped in a little bit late, but CM Punk has no regrets about being there. He would go back and do it again if he could. The moments and the relationships, obviously, that he created from that. But at the end of the day, those guys, and he goes on to say, they did not want to work with him. There was an attempt made to bring the group together and talk about things, but that was arranged by both parties. Then it was squashed by the elite side. They didn't want to have a conversation with him. Didn't want to make money with him.
I feel like, this is a personal opinion, I feel like AEW's made it known from we're not going to be that sports entertainment. We're going to be professional wrestlers. And they made a statement, and they were not going to get caught up in all the cookie cutter and all your pro wrestling things. And that's not why Moxley was there. And it's not why this one was there. It's not why these people came in, and they're going to do it their way. That's what the people want to see. And they found someone who loved and was a fan of what they did in Japan and all these other places. And he said, I'm in. I'm going to back this. For Punk to say they're not in it to, clearly we talk about the live, their TVs and all these things, and they're not selling the tickets. They're not doing these things. And if that's their business model, then they're doing it the way they want. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't compare yourself every week to the WWE, to NXT, to New Japan, to TNA, to all these things, if you're not going to play on the same level that they're playing. And that's the problem. They want to be in the mix, but they do want to do things their own way. And what happens when that money runs out, or that time free runs out, or TBS or TNT's had enough of this experiment? And where do these guys go now? Because they've been groomed to think that this is the way the business is. The veteran guys know that, hey, they're going to run it. They're going to run the gambit. Hopefully they can make some change like Clark wanted to do. And they're going to do what's good for business, and they're going to do it their way.
Yeah, somebody
That's
said
the freedom part of it.
Somebody said that if you get in a fight in a workplace, you should be fired immediately. You got to realize not only did he get in a fight, he got in a fight with the VPs of the company.
Right.
And nobody got fired.
Nobody got fired. One guy was sent home. One guy was said, hey, maybe it's good if you go home. The other guys were kept off TV.
Then when they came back, they immediately started doing the same shit, bagging the same poking the bear stuff. What? So yeah, I've never heard of a company where a VP could go have a fist fight with somebody, and I'm sure that's, like, again, this goes into the non-disclosure agreement.
Yep, exactly right.
I mean, that's, so they probably, I mean, let's be honest, they probably couldn't fire him without paying a handsome, even more handsome sum at that point in time.
Oh, I believe an extraordinary amount of money to just
once your boss arguably starts a fight with you,
right, and then backs the people who, lack of a better term, gang up on you with this thing and
rush in your locks. Yep,
it's a strange animal, man. But it clear for me. It clears a lot of things up, because at least you're getting some kind of answer from it. And Punk said, like, hey, I'm not the guy. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying this and that. I've done some things. I've had the same attitude as they have. But this is what I thought I was coming in for.
Be less upset about what I said an hour and a half.
I don't think you said anything that would make people that upset, if I'm being honest.
It is what it is. Like, I understand it being, this delicate situation, but like, I'll say it again, because obviously the headlines from, lousy reporters is going to be like, oh, he said this and he said that. I wish them all well. I legitimately do. And honestly, some people might think the most offensive thing that I could possibly say is, we're just not in the same business.
Sure.
We're not. And I think maybe if I looked at it that way at the time, I maybe would have handled things differently. But I'm a dude who, I wear my heart on my sleeve. You know what I mean? And I wasn't just hired to be a wrestler. I very much had two contracts. I was, consultant to Tony or whatever the hell it was. So if you're going to tell me that, oh, you can't even tell other wrestlers to do what, Okay, great. But that's kind of the problem is like, we give away too much. So there's that small niche audience that is more consumed about what's going on in my life than what's going on with theirs, and like this backstage stuff and all that stuff. I'm just glad to be out. They obviously didn't want me there.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, 100%.
When you say they, do you mean like certain, like the elite, those guys?
Yeah.
I can't imagine Tony didn't want you there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Tony probably still wishes I was there.
Right.
You know?
Do you mean like certain guys in the back?
Yeah.
But that's like 4 or 5 guys.
Right.
There's a much bigger locker room. I would venture to say that if we polled everyone, most would want you there. No?
Again, I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Sure.
But yeah, like again, that whole, the entire locker room hates him and like all that stuff. Like, dude, get the fuck out of here with that. That's projection to like the nth degree. That's, how are we going to try to hurt somebody's feelings? Oh, everybody hates you. Like, that's fucking high school shit, man. Okay, everybody hates me. Well, now I come over here and everyone's like, oh shit, everybody hates him. What's going to happen? Well, I guess we're going to tune into Monday Night Raw to see.
Right. Did you feel like they never wanted you there from the jump?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, like what made you feel that way?
Just interactions, just the way, just the way things are handled. Like,
Conversely, when you came back to WWE, were you nervous about any?
Seeing a lot of comments about if they got to find a work with their boss, their company wouldn't pay for it. I would put my life savings on the fact that if their boss approached you, then a fight happened and there was an injury from it, the company would have to pay for it.
Liable. They're liable.
They're liable for that injury. Whether they could terminate you or not, sure.
Right.
But the injury is
100%
liable
liable.
for it. Let alone in this particular situation where it's arguably, they approached, which led to it. Yeah, the liability is like that, man. I mean, you will, they would have to pay. It's like that in every work environment. If you got hurt at work, they have to pay. Whether they fire you or not afterwards.
Right. It's a different discussion.
But liable for that instance, the injury that happened there, they would pay for it. They'd have to.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that.
Here's the biggest thing I found interesting about this part that we just watched. I had 2 contracts.
I was about to say that. Yep. Well, that crushes that. He wasn't just there to be a wrestler.
And so perhaps that's what led to the not wanting him there, because maybe Tony didn't consult with his EVPs and the people who were in charge and signed Punk to 2 contracts. One to be a consultant, which means now he has input on how things are run, or at least can offer opinions and suggestions.
Exactly.
Which then makes me feel like you're coming into my backyard and now going to tell me how to run the business that I started or the way we want to do things here. So maybe that's the thing that set it all off. But I find it very interesting.
Like,
2 contracts.
Yep.
No non-disclosure. All these things start to make sense now.
when he was saying things like we're trying to run a business here and stuff at that press conference, that post scrum,
Right.
that ties in with that. It does make sense.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. It's very enlightening. This whole interview is very enlightening.
This conversation ends on a positive note about how great the WWE has come back to WWE has been, and questions asked if he didn't ever main event at WrestleMania again. Would that weigh on him hard? He said he didn't think so. It would be it'd be disappointing, but at the end of the day, he's done a whole lot for wrestling, and he has a lot more to give, and whatever role that would be.
Yeah. But look at the evolution of CM Punk. To his own admittance, he was the guy years ago that had to have it, wanted to have it, deserved it, wouldn't put up with it, and he's learned along the way. Those are the most successful cats in this business. And go through the history of this business, and you'll find the people Stone Cold, same way. It was there. Bret Hart, same way. Had to be his way. He had his split. If it wasn't this way, I'm leaving. By the way, they all come back. But they all come back because they all grow up. We all grow up in one way, shape, or form. Or we all have that, oh my gosh moment, that holy shit moment. And sometimes it happens when you're removed from the situation you didn't think you deserved or you deserved more from. And then you appreciate more. That's just life. That's not wrestling. That, to me, that's life. That's 58 years on this earth of figuring it out and going, this all makes sense. And to me, I'm happy for I'm happy that he's still has the fire to want to be that guy, but now the knowledge and is responsible enough to know that that doesn't define who he is as a performer, as a character, and his legacy in the business. That's just a side note that makes me super, super happy for him and so proud to hear him speak. Like,
A great interview. Really good interview.
tremendous interview.
About 2 hours long. I encourage you to go listen to it. I will attach it to this episode in the show notes in the description. So if you haven't heard it, I encourage you to go back and listen to it in full. We just picked snippets of it and went from there. But yeah, it's a sad ending, and I think sometimes you think the grass is going to be greener, and he even references that in an AEW promo. But looking back at it now, it's greener on the other side all the time, and
Right.
you used to realize for WWE, all of its flaws it has, and it does have major flaws and has had major flaws with people. There is a structure there. There's a system in place.
Yeah.
That does not seem to be the case in AEW. AEW comes out, Bill, and I thought and this is a closing thought here, we'll be closing this episode up. They didn't need to say anything at all. Tony Khan didn't come out of the gates on Twitter. Their one response, though, was sending Edge, Adam Copeland, out to start Dynamite. And he brings up the BS, gets no reaction from the crowd at all. And the show, he basically says that this is the best wrestling, that's what we're here to do, and so let's focus on that, and get no reaction, and the show started. I didn't think they needed to say anything.
So you had Adam Copeland come out, who wasn't there during this,
Right.
right? So he's just
He was
going
not
off the
there.
information he's been given.
He wasn't there through any of it.
FTR closed the show earlier this week without mentioning anything about it, just saying, this is how I make my living and I love being here. Trying to reinforce that AEW is a good place to be. Where, like, to your point, they should have just left it alone. Now you're force feeding me to believe that.
Yeah.
And I think they should have left it alone, to your point. I think you're exactly right on that.
How hard do you think it was for Tony Khan not to tweet something?
Oh, I think I think that maybe somebody got a hold of him and said, don't be that guy.
For once, they got a hold of him and said, you can't do that.
I'd like to think someone got a hold of him and said, don't be that guy. Let other people take the heat and make a little comment or something. You don't need to do that. Run this bird, fly this plane the way you want it to go. What did you get into it for? What was your goal? I know he had to have a 5-year plan. Did he reach it? And what's his 5-year plan going forward? So I started off this episode saying, I'm really glad he didn't come out of the gate on Twitter or anything. I think he had his hands full going back and forth with Eric Bischoff. Just let sleeping dogs lie, man. Hats off to Punk for the interview. By the way, Ariel, again, can't say enough about this interview. Probably the best interview of the year, and we're not even halfway through the year. But yeah, AEW, leave it alone and go do your thing. That's the thing. Do your thing and stop worrying about what other people are doing if that's your business model. But please don't keep bringing in resources that can help you and have that thing be the thing that continuously bites you in the backside.
Unfortunately for AEW, this has not been the last of issues or drama.
Yeah.
Every workplace has that.
Every-
But again, this feels like the end of this chapter. This has been closed now.
Good. I'm glad.
Was this better than you thought it would be? This interview, this discussion, do you think it'd also be put this to bed?
I think so. I think it puts it to bed. It definitely was better than I would have. I think watching this, I'm like, oh man, I have to listen to this because this is going to get really.
He didn't want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah. But I think he did a great job of it. And I'll say this again. The one thing you can always say about Punk is he's real. He's real. I mean,
Bill, and he's a savvy business guy.
yeah. And what is it? 3 things. There's 3 truths: your truth, their truth, and the real truth.
Yeah.
But we haven't heard their truth. We've only heard Punk's truth. And so we have to take that at face value. But I think he did a great job with the interview. I think he was as open as he could be. He didn't put the blame on anyone. He took share of his downfalls in it and how it went. And I think it was just a great interview. And it allows the people that were hanging on for the meat and potatoes of this story, it's done. Be happy with what he's going to be doing when he comes back. Look forward to the matches and the the wars he's going to have coming up on WWE.
And hopefully this is it's done and AEW moves forward too. It's important for
yeah,
him.
that's right. Yeah, for everybody. Everybody, like, it's done. Move on. Do your thing.
Yep.
Stop worrying about if that's the thing that keeps getting you headlines and bringing people to watch your product, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be it. So boom, let sleeping dogs lie. Boom. This weekend, depending on when you're listening. So we know, you and I know, WrestleMania is coming up this weekend. And it's the first start. It's the Super Bowl. It's the thing. And it's the first start for everybody across the wrestling world, not just WWE. This has been marked as the start for everybody's revamping, and everybody's going to start doing new things. So, yeah, just focus on that.
Another good episode here, Bill.
Yeah, man.
I know it'll do well, and the intent is not just that. I think it's, for me, as someone who thought about this a lot, it truly is the bookend of it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of I don't know, I guess that validation for me.
Yeah.
I was curious, and I feel like I really wanted to know. And this just now, I'm done with it.
So let me ask you this one last question on this episode. As a CM Punk fan, as we all know you are, and rightfully so, are you happy with this being the end of this conversation?
Yes,
Cool. And
I think
it served its purpose.
it did, and I
Yeah.
think it was good. I don't think it puts AEW in a negative light, but it also puts AEW, like you said, in a position to start from ground zero and build up and focus on the right things now.
Yeah.
Because that is over. But here's the problem, though. It didn't just happen because CM Punk was there.
Right.
That was just the perfect thing to make a fire. All the ingredients to make a fire were there. That could happen again.
Yeah.
And the way they handle it will have to be different moving forward. Policies, protocols, as a business, they have to grow from a human resource standpoint. They have to be prepared for these things.
Yeah.
And I think if there's one takeaway at the end of the day for AEW, they do want this long-standing future in this industry. It's got to be that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I hope it's also a new beginning for AEW as well in that regard.
I hope so too, especially with some of the talent they have, some of the leadership that's there in front of them if they choose to use it. So
Yep.
I think after Mania weekend, I think it's a fresh start for everybody, and competition makes everybody better. And there's room for a lot of players, not just one player in this game. And I hope they do well. I'll never bash them. I just question really hard sometimes how it comes about. And it's only that question when it is a negative thing. So
Right.
the negative is over. Punk has moved on. They've moved on. Everybody move on. I'm excited for what's coming up. And I'm glad we got to have this conversation, because this does tie it up in a good knot for us and allows us to move on.
Yeah, it does. I think, man, we've had a lot of people listening tonight. I appreciate you hanging out with us for the last hour and 45 minutes. Wow. Crazy.
Wow.
Obviously, next week we'll be back with all things WrestleMania. This week, though, we had a kind of a topic to fill in that gap. And again, this podcast is live streamed. This show is live streamed every Thursday at 9:15 p.m. ish, that time period. But the episodes release a week later. That's about as good as I can do with all the other stuff that I do. But that also gives you the benefit of coming to this live stream, being a part of it. You get this content earlier, of course, which is, as we've I want to say revamped, but as we've kind of restructured this content over the last 6 months now.
Yeah.
And this is the way we've kind of gone, and it's more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we love talking about that old stuff, but it's hard to get away from this interaction and talking with you guys live. So we really appreciate, and there's a lot of you out there that have stayed with this whole stream. We'll always appreciate that and all the support that we get. If you want to listen to this stuff later, BillDeMott.com. It's available about a week later in audio and video form on YouTube. Yeah, BillDeMott.com will get you to everything. So, and of course, Jeff Townsend Media, JeffTownsend.media, home of all this and a lot of other good content. Bill, your closing thoughts before we hit our stuff and get out of here.
Yeah, Jeff, a huge thank you to everybody who does this live stream with us. We appreciate it. Keep the questions, keep the comments. You guys start some of the greatest conversations we've been having in the past 6 months. So thank you very much. Yeah, this is exciting, man. And you Jeff, you really make this a good, play on words, experience. And, don't stop the way you formatted this and the way we go, because you're changing the way things are done, in my opinion. And I appreciate it because I like going back to the old school stuff and discussing history, but I also love this time in the business when there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
And coming into the next couple months, especially, we're gonna have a lot to talk about. So thank you to everybody who tunes in, and Jeff, always thank you for the hard work and putting the time in on this, and just everybody keep it up. Thanks.
Appreciate you, Bill. And it's always a fun few hours of my week. I'm a big wrestling fan, and it's when I get to talk about it. Don't talk about it a whole lot to anybody else besides, people maybe online a little bit, but this is kind of that few hours of nostalgia and just, almost an escape for me, right?
Yes. Takes us away from our realities a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Bill, say your magic and I'll say mine. We'll get out of here.
All right, everybody, you know me. Do what you say what you mean what you do.
And keep being you and keep being great.
Don't let mama regret. Give your love and your sweat to the shadow.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?